what is the scope for future in the high-tech space. Let me initiate with a humble introduction of myself and the company. My name is Nitin Naveen, and I'll be your host for the day. I'm working as Vice President Innovation Strategy at AI CoreSpot, and I bring with me an experience of around a couple of decades in consulting firms dealing in and around the emerging technologies. I have been joined by my colleagues Arvind and Naveen, who will be assisting me in keeping today's event lively. Also, they will be stepping in to resolve technical glitches if it comes in between. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to them for their hard work and dedication in making this event a great success. This webinar is intended to deliver the new age technological advancements in the high-tech industry with a great seamless experience. Speaking about the company AI CoreSpot, we started a couple of years back, supported by a knowledge and innovation partner, which is InfoVision, and technology partner, which is Digit7. AI CoreSpot aims to function as a comprehensive knowledge hub, offering valuable information and perspectives on a wide range of cutting-edge technologies around Industry 4.0, which includes AI, ML, deep learning, robotics, cloud, IoT, edge computing, analytics, 5G, drone, edge AI, digital twin, and AR/VR solutions. With the objective of offering an in-depth exploration of all the sectors that involve technology, we introduce a different theme every month, and we have been progressively gaining momentum. Our goal is to become the leading AI-driven community worldwide where individuals with similar interests like you can contribute to mutual growth and success. We prioritize industry-backed webinars and hybrid events, ensuring that our knowledge base is built on credible data provided by esteemed industry leaders, subject matter experts, thought leaders, and all our trusted partners. Further, we nurture the content through various mediums like blogs, videos, podcasts, newsletters, to shed light on this ever-evolving industry. So join us today for one-of-a-kind webinar focused on maximizing customer value through digital transformation in the high-tech industry. We'll cover a range of topics in this particular one, which includes digital transformation capabilities, use cases from areas such as AI, ML, deep learning, generative AI, AR, VR, edge IoT, blockchain, advanced analytics, and so on. Our expert panel will provide valuable insights and engage in a thought-provoking discussion that you might not want to miss. And just to let you know, there are lots more in store for the next month with the focus on multiple industries and different technologies. All includes Gen AI, machine learning, blockchain, IoT, AR, VR, digital twin, metaverse, chat GPT, and quantum computing. May I take this opportunity to further request all of you to go through our website, which is aicorespot.io, for future updates. We'll be delighted if you could show your love for us via likes and shares on our social media handles. It will keep you all updated on everything that we propose to offer in the coming months to follow. Now, before we get started with this particular panel discussion, here are a few highlights to set up tone for the absorbing learning and networking session. First of all, we would like to introduce our community partners for today. It includes great companies like VMware, InfoVision, Lumen Technologies, and 8x8, who came together to make this webinar a success. We would also like to give thanks to all our attendees who took the time to register and join us today. It means to us that you are here to achieve your objectives and connect with one another. Ultimately, our goal as a platform is to help you gain valuable insights and build meaningful connections. So if you walk away with even just a few innovative ideas or connections, we'll consider it a job well done. So quickly, let me introduce the esteemed panel members. We have John, who is Vice President Global Practice Head at InfoVision. He's also the moderator for this panel discussion. Joining him today are four great leaders. Let me introduce one by one to every one of you. First panel member is Abhi, who is VP of Emerging Tech and Global Head of Innovation at InfoVision. Second panel member is Gautam, who is Senior Executive Advisor and CIO CDO App Modernization, Digital Transformation, and Hybrid Cloud are his expertise at VMware. Third panel member is Sulabh, who is Vice President IT at Lumen Technologies. And fourth panel member is Sue, who is Senior Director, Business Development and Alliances at 8x8. Just one-liner disclaimer before we start. The views shared by all the speakers are their personal ones and is not related to any of the organization which they are representing. So now over to you, John, to begin this exciting panel discussion.
Good morning and good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you so much, Nitin, and a very good morning to our esteemed panelists as well. We've got a great topic for our discussion today, which is maximizing customer value through digital transformation in the high-tech industry. And I'm in an extraordinary lineup of tech experts, subject matter experts in their own fields, and fellow innovators as well. And I'm not going to reveal anyone's age, but I can tell you this, that there's over 100 years of combined experience between Dr. Gautam, Dr. Sulab, Sue, Abhi, and myself. That's a wealth of knowledge. I'm definitely very excited to hear from them just as much as the audience is. And we're going to get started off in a minute as we speak about everything from the fourth industrial revolution, digital born native disruptors, the rapid rise of cloud, 5G networks, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, especially at a time when all these are converging. And research says that the planned investment in high tech for the US market alone in 24 is expected to be about $1.4 trillion and 1.8 trillion in 27, which and a lot of this growth is going to be fueled, it's going to be accelerated by investments in cloud computing, in AI, in IoT, which is going to drive a lot of this investment as well. And we're going to speak about all these in a minute. And before we get started, just a quick note on housekeeping for our audience. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. If you think of a question for any of our esteemed panelists at any point, just type it in there. We'll get it worked in towards the end based on the time that we have left. So that's pretty much it on the housekeeping side of it. And let's jump right into the discussion. So even within the high-tech industry, across digitization or digitalization, digital transformation could mean different things, right from introducing AI or cloud computing to enhance customer experience, or it could mean redesigning your supply chain to have access to better data and ultimately using machine learning to make better sense of it. Or it could even mean using random forest classification to have spot on predictions. What's the next best product? How do you drive demand, promotion, demand prediction engines? And adding to all of this, you have digital born native disruptors like the Amazons, the Metas, the Teslas, the Googles of the world that have changed the rules of the game for all high-tech industries. So from agile transformation to making cloud platforms ready on modern tech stacks to introducing AI or cloud computing to enhance customer experiences. Digital transformation can mean a lot of things for different companies, different industries. And my first question, this is for all the panelists. So digital transformation, the term, which has been a buzzword, which has evolved over the years. So how would you define and what have you seen within your own organization or customer organizations across industries with respect to major transformation initiatives? We'll probably get started off with you, Dr. Sulab.
So, first of all, John, I would just say you talked about the age. I think we are all humans, so age matters for bottle of wine. For us, even I guess that many of the attendees may be more knowledgeable than us. Who would be of younger age, definitely. So, but good comment there. Thanks for the introduction that you guys have done. So I would say, in my mind, the real definition of digital transformation, I would say it is, which will help to achieve three things. First is thinking about the customer and shareholders value. What is the real use case of the problem that we want to solve? Second, I would say the company. That means converting that into a cash flow or the right financial. And last is the employees, right? At the end of the day, what's the bonus we are able to create for our employees, right? So customer, company, and the employees. And then if we have really defined what we need to do to achieve these three values and define our use cases and then think about the technology, what is needed to deliver these use cases, I think that's how we should start with. Rather than just getting into, hey, we need to have this some cool tech within the company. Blockchain used in 1 or 2 years back, blockchain was on really on the hype. Hey, I want to do blockchain within my company, but hey, what was the real use case that we want to solve that will create the value across these three domains? That's how I would say start with, and that will dictate what should be the real definition of digital transformation for the company.
Thank you, Doctor, for your views. I'll like to hear from Dr. Gautam as well.
Yeah, thanks for starting that off. That's a really good way to start the conversation. I'm in alignment with that. I believe that digital transformation is the strategic orchestration of people, process, and technology to achieve specific business outcomes and value. And those are the ones that will prove to be market differentiators for the company. And this is what I think, especially for high-tech industries, is really important, because that differentiator that you bring to the market will help drive the pioneering integration of upskilled people, optimized processes, and cutting-edge technologies and strategies to redesign the existing business models and operations, and then propel the innovation, competitiveness, and value creation in this digital frontier, this ever-evolving, hyper-dynamic world that we're in. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, digital transformation, I believe, is all about managing the risk appetite for a company while increasing the value that it delivers.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. And Abhi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, thank you so much for having me on the panel with the rest of the esteemed guests here. Really glad to be here. And like Gautam said, I think it's a really pertinent question to start off the discussion. So I work in the services industries, and I do work with organizations across different verticals, across industries, right? So in my experience, when we talk about digital transformation, it's a pretty broad term, and I wouldn't be surprised if I had 10 different perspectives, similar but a little bit different, from 10 different people that I talk to, right? So, but at the baseline, the aim for digital transformation, in my view and experience, is to fundamentally change how businesses operate, in line with what Gautam and Sulabh were saying. Deliver the right value to customers and stay competitive in this digital age, right? It is about data reconciliation and consequently setting up scalable infrastructure, compute, and the right access. This is true for all industries, whether you talk healthcare, finance, manufacturing, retail, high tech, and any other industry as well. While the specifics can vary across industries, the core principles of digital transformation, in my experience, are pretty much consistent. They typically include things like technology adoption, data utilization, process optimization, customer centricity, innovation, agility, cybersecurity. But there are certain key pillars to actually do all of these things like change management, right? Leadership, vision, measuring the success the right way, setting up the culture. I'm sure we'll be talking about some of these things, but all of these are going to be key pillars, right? But net, in summary, if you look at digital transformation, it's not a one size fits all concept. It is tailored and ongoing journey for each industry based on their kinds of use cases and what applies to them, to remain competitive and relevant in this digital era, like Gautam had mentioned.
Yeah, and Sue, as the head of alliances, partnerships, would like to understand your perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the comments that everybody else in the panel made. I agree. It's such a broad term, and it means something very different for every organization. Coming from the cloud communication space, that's what we do at 8x8. We do contact center in the cloud and business communications in the cloud. It's really interesting because, a lot of times that's the last thing to kind of move to the cloud. So, there's still a lot of very large companies that are running premise-based, systems, and that's what they're engaging with their customers on, right? So I think it's, there is that reluctance, I think, to not disrupt that component of it, that critical component of your business. But everyone 100% recognizes that you got to move that to the cloud. So it could be, as basic as that. But then I also think once you're there, I'm seeing a lot of people interested in automation, obviously AI. I know we're obviously going to be talking a lot about that today, but how do you take what you're doing and make it a bit easier for your customers to interact without jeopardizing the customer experience. So I think it's very critical when you talk about digital transformation. You definitely want to focus on your customers. It's really important. But I do agree with employees are a big part of it too, right? You don't want to put in so much automation that they feel like their jobs are compromised, or the automation that's being delivered isn't really, augmenting and helping the process. So that's kind of what I see in the communication space and in the, alliances that I work with, which quite honestly, we're bringing them in to augment our platform to facilitate, these moves around digital transformation.
Very well said. So, and thank you so much for that. Moving on to the second question. So, according to McKinsey, in fact, today's major shift in innovation is expected to continue to accelerate until 2025, and increased efficiency, greater business agility, and ultimately unlocking a lot of value for employees, customers, shareholders, has majorly been the focus for a lot of the digital transformational engagements. And then most often comes down to top line, bottom line, revenue increase in shareholder value, increasing valuation for companies, which in turn drives your investment, your PE funding, all of that. So this next question is for Dr. Sullivan, as a leader in your space and the one who's been tasked to build the execution engine, establishing the project management office or operations practice for global IT or engineering product organizations. How can organizations identify what their business outcomes or priorities are beyond just the focus on revenue?
So I will go back to the, in terms of the priorities and how to establish it. First, I will go back to, the three things that I was trying to say, right? The business value, the customer value, then what we do for the financials, and the last thing for the employees, right? Which pertains to maybe skills and all those things which Gautam was saying. Then how you do the prioritization, I think prioritization probably is one of the most toughest challenge that companies face, right? And the reason is most of the time the reason is the siloed working across the different functions. So marketing and commercial may say that, hey, I have this priority, but product may not be completely aware about that, right? And then it will not gonna translate the same to engineering, obviously, right? Because then they will end up getting asked from different functions, engineering and IT team, and then it's hard for them to do the prioritization, right? So one of the way to solve that is making it more really visible, maybe creating a dashboard for engineering and IT and clearly saying, hey, this is our prioritization. Now, from engineering and IT lens, we also need to consider there is a lot of KTLO, keeping the lights on work needs to happen, which engineering and IT team needs to do, regardless of what is the business priorities are. So keeping aside the capacity for that work, right? Maybe 30% or 40%, depending on the maturity of how much technical debt you have, and then making sure that you talk to your stakeholders and tell this is the capacity for us, and that will help to define the prioritization, make a decision on one of the input for decisions to make the prioritization. That's how I see to solve this dilemma of how to do the prioritization when you definitely have a lot of competing priorities. And it should go back to the 3 points that I was trying to say to help us define the priority.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. And in fact, Dr. Gautam, as from your experience working with the C-suite executives, global 1,000 enterprises, and transforming their complete process using Lean or Agile DevOps. I'd certainly love to hear your views as well on how companies can identify what their business outcomes or priorities are beyond revenue.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Sulabh started off with an amazing list of ways by which we can evaluate business outcomes or priorities. I'm going to add a couple of them to it. So the first thing that I feel we need to start off with to understand the priority of a business outcome is to understand the why. We need to focus on the why of the organization. Why are we going through this digital transformation? What is the value that we are trying to create as an organization? I think understanding that why and understanding what we need to accomplish will help us evaluate the priorities for the business outcomes. And I love the fact that almost everyone here has stated in some way, shape, or form that business value is not solely financial. It is a byproduct. Profitability is something that is needed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be companies. We probably would be nonprofits. So revenue growth, profitability, shareholder value, all those are really important. But if we don't understand why we exist as a company, it's going to be really hard to generate value. The next one I would say is operational efficiency. Like, it's not just about generating the value, but it's about delivering value as seamlessly as possible and as smoothly as possible. So the flow of value within your organization has to be really good. And so prioritizing based on flow of value or improving your value stream could be another way to prioritize your business outcomes. And then finally, you have additional things that are becoming more important, like the societal and environmental values, like your corporate and social responsibilities, sustainability and ethical practices, risk management outcomes around resilience and connectivity and compliance. So it's not just 2 or 3 things that go into prioritization. And some leaders do make this mistake where they take only revenue and probably 1 or 2 additional things, alignment to corporate goals, for example. But in reality, it is a priority matrix. It's a value matrix which ranges anywhere from the financial aspect or the revenue aspect to reducing tech debt, having a happier, positive culture. There are so many ways to evaluate the priorities.
Some points on how we have to reduce tech debt and focus on value metrics, and that's definitely a good segue into the next part of the conversation that I had, and one of the queries that I had for Abhi, in fact, especially on the innovation space and the emerging tech space. Abhi, so as the head of innovation and the R&D division, where you're focusing on emerging technologies and concepts, right, from fully homomorphic encryption or knowledge engineering or GANs or mixed reality, robotics as a service, edge IoT, or blockchain. And how do you believe organizations should look at breaking their digital transformation focus areas? And how should they prioritize this, especially on the innovation when it comes to R&D projects?
Excellent question, John. Thank you for that. And I couldn't agree more with both Sulabh and Gautam in how they've characterized the prioritization matrices, right? And that's, again, working across industries, coming across different stereotypes of thoughts from different industry leaders. One of the frameworks that we've built around digital transformation, and as transformation eventually moves into innovation, we've broken that into 3 major pillars, right? So one is business opportunities and processes, which goes back into revenues and top line. Second one is operational efficiencies, like I think Gautam had mentioned, which again goes down into probably bottom line efficiencies to a large extent. And then customer experiences. Now, these customers can be internal, they can be external customers as well, right? So if you are in a consumer space or a B2B space, then it's not just who's looking inwards into the organization, but who are you servicing and how do you improve their experiences? So Apart from the revenues, the top line and the bottom line, which goes back to business opportunities on the bottom line, there are other tangibles and intangibles the organizations and their product lines need to be aware of and find a way to measure them, like customer experience, customer engagement and retention. That could be one of those, right? Uniqueness in brand value and recognition, attachment of the customers to the brand, like the Apple effect, right? That's another one. Net promoter score. So there are multiple KPIs. Most of them are measurable that we need to absolutely take into consideration in terms of what will have impact into your digitization. And when it comes to prioritization, like Gautam had mentioned, this is a very common problem that we've seen across organizations. Not everyone will have similar priorities, but if you need to look at a blueprint, it is important to start from the question, why, right? Why do you want to do something? Well, it could be a large initiative, like an entire transformation of an organization, or it could be micro initiatives, like you want to try out generative AI, or you want to start building in, NLP processes into your call center automation, or things like those, right? So, but the question you need to ask is why? Why do you want to do something? And drive your business values and corresponding priorities based on that. For instance, lots of organizations take some of these initiatives from a fear of missing out perspective, right? So other people are doing, if I don't do it, I'm going to be left out, right? So FOMO, if that is your answer, then that may not be the right answer in most of the cases, right? It is not a good metric for prioritization. Another way of doing this to evaluate is look at desirability of a particular feature, look at the feasibility of the particular feature, the viability of that particular feature, create this matrix of desirability, feasibility, and viability, which again crosses across your technical debt, your customer experience, as well as your business appetite for something like that. And then see how those initiatives align with these three metrics. And that could also help you with a practical outcome for what the prioritization could be, right? And then the other thing that you should focus on is Gen Zs or Gen Xs, who are your target audience, right? A lot of things change based on who your target audience are. Gen Zs may be more focused on a completely different set of priorities as opposed to what Gen Xs could be looking for, right? So prioritization is there is definitely a method to the madness behind it, but the basic question you need to be looking at is, why are we trying to do this? If you have an answer to that, a lot of those things will fall out. There are other techniques. I don't want to take over a lot of time in answering this one particular question, but there are methodologies that you should be putting in place, especially when you look at R&D based initiatives, when you look at emerging technologies, right? If you're going to start going after all emerging technologies and you want to try out everything, you're just not going to be successful. So how do you set up a hypothesis-based methodology, and how do you encourage your people to change that entire culture to think that way, innovation as a culture, right? So there are methodologies that you need to be looking at, and there are frameworks that we should be encouraging the organization to adopt in terms of understanding where you cut your losses and come back out of the rabbit burrow to look at right prioritization if you're not moving forward with into the right space as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Abhi. And speaking about the fear of missing out and having practical outcomes or having a method to the whole madness, and that's definitely about being disruptive, being relevant. A lot of companies focus on doing that, and then today, with competition from digitally native companies entering multiple industries, enterprises have also realized that they need to do more than just modernize their technology stack, or the focus has shifted towards integrating digital tools across all aspects of businesses. And then this next question, in fact, is for you, Sue, and with your expertise across cloud applications and having worked with the teams on Google Workspaces or Salesforce, ServiceNow, Oracle Cloud, or GCP AWS. And again, you did speak about unified communication or telephony, collaboration, CPaaS systems. Now, how do traditional organizations keep up with the CX advances that a lot of digitally native companies have always delivered on. Would certainly love to hear your views on that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we see it more and more, right? I mean, everyone wants that Amazon level experience for their customers, but they weren't born that way, so they have some catching up to do. I think it's important to work with the right types. I think it's important to work with the right types of, not just partners from a technology standpoint, but partners that can kind of help advise. We talked a lot about the why, right? And I know, Abhi, you talked a lot about having a methodology. Like, those things normally need to come from someone that's got the expertise that can come kind of take a look at your business from the outside and figure out where you should prioritize, because you can't do it. If you try to do everything at once, you'll just, likely have a disaster on your hands or a very expensive science project that nobody wants. I think it's kind of understanding, what is the organization trying to do? What is the why? And then focusing on a few initiatives that will be very impactful, and have a shorter ROI, let's say, than, a broader, but have a roadmap, right? Because you're going to want to bring in some of those other offerings, but you need to kind of focus on where can you have the most impact right away that will get you to the next level of having that, better customer experience that is more like the digital native companies, like the Amazons and the Ubers of the world. And I think that that's happening because consumers are just becoming a bit more, demanding of that type of an experience. Like, we want to be able to, order something and not only order it and get a confirmation right away that it's on its way, but be able to track that entire journey and get notifications of where it is. And, you can get a picture of it when it's delivered on your doorstep. So a lot of technology goes in to that cycle, but most traditional businesses don't understand which technologies they need to bring in to actually build that journey. And that's why I do think it's very important to work with a partner that really understands your business and can really sit down and figure out, all right, this is what we should be building. Here are the technologies that we should be bringing in, and they'll get you on that roadmap and build out some, successful journeys so that you can kind of start that path of a really strong digital transformation around customer experience.
Perfect. Thank you, Sue.
And just to add to that, I think, John, there is so much expectations that are constantly changing after the digitally native companies that have come in. For example, I'm a prime example of that. I order something and I feel a little bit of a tinge when I see that this item is going to be arriving tomorrow, not today. And so the expectations have drastically changed.
Absolutely.
Yes, we've been spoiled by it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the expectations from a lot of the customers and a lot of the transformation which is driven by that as well. And today, a lot of companies, it's not just enough to be product centric or customer centric anymore, but companies need to think beyond that today. And then certainly would love to hear from you, Gautam, on what your views are on this. Just not being product centric, customer centric anymore for any company for that matter.
Yeah, definitely. And so thank you for bringing all this up, because it is really challenging for organizations that have a lot of legacy or heritage to immediately shed their skin and assume that they are Amazon-like company, right? Because it's okay to dream, but at the end of the day, you want to be grounded in reality and then approach that in a roadmap way. So to your question, John, I would say I firmly believe it's a matter of evolution. And I'm going to give a little bit of a IT history lesson, not a real history lesson, right? So we started off as a product-centric company, organization where everyone was focused on the product. The value was from the product or the service that was being provided. I believe this was an extension of the Industrial Revolution or scientific management that companies embraced, more of the workforce kind of a thing, the factory approach. Dyson's a really good example of a product-centric company because it focuses on innovating and perfecting its products. They could be $3,000, but that would be the best vacuum that you are going to buy. So that is focusing on the perfection of the product. You have FedEx and Western Union that are good examples of providing services. And then what happened is we started realizing that products and services were not successful unless the customer was involved and was happy. And so this is where examples like Amazon, which they claim to be customer obsessed, but I would put, again, this is my view, I would put it in the stalker category because they know way too much about us. But that is the obsession that they have. Then you have Netflix, you have Slack, and you have Zappos. Now consider the last 3 years, and we just touched upon that. Both Abhi and Sue started talking about it, right? We think about the last 3 years and how we as humans have evolved. We appreciate the experience of a company and what it provides rather than just the service of the product. Like, we want something instantaneously. We don't want to wait. We've been pampered. We've been for over we lost a year. The entire world lost over a year, and we want to make up for it. And so we don't have enough time. And so we want things immediately, instantaneously. And so this is where experience economies are really important. So Disney is a very common example that is given about an experience. But keep that aside and consider a company like Starbucks. It's not only a coffee shop, right? It's an experience. It's a lifestyle choice, even though that means you're drinking really burnt and overpriced coffee. But people still flock there because they enjoy that experience. Another example is in the hospitality industry, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton, the Conrad, right? They're not just a hotel. It's an immersive experience targeted for the ultimate comfort of the guest. People just expect more now. And so as companies, we have evolved to start catering to those growth needs and not just the deficiency needs that we do. Like, if you're familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have gone beyond to much more higher value things over the last 3 years. And we really want to take care of ourselves and pamper ourselves. And we feel that we understand how fragile we as humans are. And so we want a better experience. And that's why I feel we need to focus on experiences and not to just be customer focused. And so unless we provide an experience to humans that improve their quality of life in some perceivable way, we as companies will not be considered successful anymore.
I like that, Gautam. Experience economy. It's a new term, and I think I 100% agree with you. That's a good term.
Yeah, and I think that experience is what is going to also build that brand affinity for a lot of those customers as well.
Yeah. Another point I would say there is that, on the employee side, products, we also need to ensure that we are continuously building the right skills. And what you will see is, whenever a company needs to do a digital transformation, usually, we get a lot of leadership from external, right? We definitely get that. We need to have that. We get a lot of people from external. But what also happens is that there is a lot of institutional knowledge within the residing team. So how do you combine the institutional knowledge with the new skill set, right? And then you make things happen. That is also required along with being the product centric or the customer centricity, right? I would say maybe add employee centricity also there.
Totally, Philip. Thank you. That is such an amazing thing that you're bringing up, because it's all about ensuring that you have employee empathy in addition to customer empathy, right? We talk about the extrinsic empathy a lot, but we don't drink our own champagne. And more often than not, we don't consider the immense amount of value that we as people bring to the company. So I'm 100% with you. I believe that people are the true value creators. It's not technology, but I may be in a very, very different spectrum. But yeah, I'm 100%.
I'm sure the audience is enjoying the conversation back and forth between the panelists just as much as I am, and talk about timing. And as we were on the topic, I just get a notification that my wife has ordered something using Amazon Prime, and that's the speak about customer experience and how Amazon as a company has started listening to their customers, right? Today, you don't have to leave the platform to place an order, find the item. You don't have to work with the banks in the back end. You don't have to work with your 3PL, your logistic service providers. All of it, from the pricing, your recommendation engines, everything done over there. And you can get your credit cards, make your payments, everything, and get it delivered in just a day's time. And that's some phenomenal transformation and disruption that we are seeing today by a lot of these digitally native companies. And while we speak about transformation, which is very complex, and it requires a lot of enterprises to rethink their business models, it requires a change in organizational structures, practices, and in fact, a previous survey by McKinsey, and again this and one that was done by Forbes, which was assessed. They assessed that the risk of failure in digital transformation was close to 84%, and McKinsey said that 69% of digital transformation projects fail, which is a shocking statistic, right? And then so this next question, and in fact is for all the panelists, and probably we'll start with Sue, Tavi, Gautam, Sulabh. And why do most of the digital transformations fail today? And then how do you avoid the pitfalls to derive customer value from each of these initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's finding the right balance. Where I see digital transformation failing is when you have a company that tries to take on too much, right? They try to boil the ocean and they don't really know how to harness what they're bringing into the organization. And then I think there's the flip side of that, not being aggressive enough, not getting to that point where you're realizing that you have to make those moves, and those moves are going to be a little, maybe potentially a bit risky, but you have to do that in order to survive in this new world. So I think it's really finding, where do you put the priority and where do you start on your journey? And don't try to be like others, right? You do want to have the Amazon level experience, but maybe your business is unique and your customers are unique and you need to understand your demographic. So instead of kind of the copycat approach, going in and really understanding, what would make sense for your business, right? Like if you are, dealing with, I don't want to say elder people, but a different demographic, let's say, an Amazon experience might not be a good fit for them, right? Like that's too much. People don't want to do everything on their phone. They want that, I need to call you and talk to you kind of interaction. So I think it's super important to understand your customer and the model of your business. I also think, talking about the employee, I think that's a very, very important thing, because employees are really your company's best asset. And I think the one thing you want to stay away from is scaring people when you start talking about things like AI, right? I think there's a great opportunity for AI within the business organization to really elevate your employees. So like it's something that, again, at the end of the day, these technologies are amazing, but you are going to need to bring it in and understand how is it going to help your business, right? And I'm seeing all these new titles now when I go to these conferences, like, director of automation, and these new titles we didn't see, 3 or 4 years ago, right? So those individuals, they're really understanding what these things are and making sure that they're bringing them in the appropriate manner within an organization. And there's also the reality of, we need to make sure that this stuff is secure, right? Everyone wants to talk about ChatGPT, but we all understand that you're not going to put that on the front lines of your organization. So I think there's a lot within the organization that can help your employees just elevate themselves within the organization, but also making sure that you're building a digital transformation strategy that is for your brand, for your customers, and not, trying to maybe copycat something else, but you're not really doing the right thing because that's just not the fit for your customers or your product.
Thank you so much, Sue. And then it's very important to know your customers, listen to your employees, and just reminding the audience about something that Abby mentioned about earlier as well, right? So the demands from Gen Z, from millennials, it's way different, and that's very important in building the product platform and looking at what your next innovation, your transformation needs to be. And I'd certainly love to hear from you as well, Abby, on this.
No, absolutely. In fact, very well put, Sue. Like you said, I think it's very important for organizations to start slow but steady, but pull the right levers with the business first focus, right? What is important and why are you trying to do this? Going back to what we're saying, do not deploy technology for the sake of deploying technology. There has to be a solid reasoning behind it. And then you also have to start, really thinking about what technology that you're going to be pushing out. For example, a lot of customers that I've talked to have been so excited about Gen AI because it has truly transformed the way people start thinking about what AI could be doing. But you do not have the right governance around Gen AI yet, right? So, but you cannot not leverage something like that. So how do you start experimenting some of those things? Do not expose yourself to the risk of, security or data breach risks by exposing your data out to customers and having Gen AI directly talk to them and things like those, right? Make them more internal, use them for SDLC acceleration use cases or things like those. Experiment into the right spaces where you can thoroughly get an understanding of what the risks with this is and how do you employ that towards, safeguarding yourself and then enriching your customers. But the most important thing that you need to safeguard, leaders have to safeguard in terms of digital transformation failures is, again, going back to that why question. I cannot harp enough on that. I'll give you one example of that. One of the Fortune 100 customers that we were working with, that question of why became the biggest issue for them. They wanted to go through a digital transformation initiative and they've set up a major budget for it. But the challenge is that the digital transformation definition meant different things for different leaders and different managers in the hierarchy. So within the same hierarchy level, there's different definitions as well, right? So not until we work with them to define what this means, did the right goals and the vision come into place and the appropriate prioritization started happening. Second thing is this transformation is equally about changing and updating appropriate processes, appropriate culture changes and adoption enablement. If you do not have adoption, your transformations will not mean anything, right? All your money is actually going into your L bucket, not to your P bucket to a large extent. So setting up that right culture and affecting that culture change is very important. And so change is not necessarily forced on all the time. Change needs to be made easy, which that itself is a very extremely hard thing to do. But make the processes in a way that people and your leaders, internal leaders, they do not look for a messiah to come in and help with the change. They should feel enabled that they themselves can affect this change, right? For example, going back to the Gen AI example we're talking about, how can you leverage something like that for your internal employees or internal facing use cases where they can get reports just by talking to a Gen AI bot and helping it understand the data and give you the reports. This is not necessarily going out of your organization, right? So start looking at things like those. And education is extremely important, right? In today's age, there is so much confusion about each technology, what this means, and there is their own interpretations of what it is. And a lot of those interpretations are not necessarily accurate. For one of our customers, the leaders were completely looking at lifting and shifting their entire on-premise to cloud infrastructure as a service, right? And we proposed to go cloud native, and they did not understand what that meant, but they were not willing to admit that part of it. So we actually had to do a proof of value to demonstrate how serverless architectures, microservice architectures, how they impact the operational efficiencies and maintenance costs. And then it became a no-brainer for them that, okay, this makes sense, we should go this way, right? Purely through that initiative, we were able to save over $80 million in their bottom lines, right? So education is also extremely important, and that enablement is very, very important. So these are some of the key things that we as an organization always educate our customers in terms of making sure that they safeguard themselves from failures. It is about people, process, technology, and the intent of why they want to use these things.
Yeah, definitely speaking about prioritization, making sure the customer knows what they want, educating, having those smaller successes before going ahead with a big bang approach. And then on the same topic, Sulabh, anything that you would like to add?
No, I mean, I think you touched. Oh, sorry, did you say Sue or? I thought you said Sue. Go ahead.
No.
So I would say, I agree with all the points, but I will add a couple of more others on why digital transformation fails. First is, I think it's also sometimes a lot of misalignment between the stakeholders, right? And even within the leadership as well. That some leaders may understand it, obviously technology, IT leaders may understand it, but they will find themselves hard to explain it to the business leaders. Sometimes the business leader really want to do it, but then they don't give the enough maybe budget to the IT and tech leader. So the misalignment sometimes may happen. Second, I would say is the silos. Many times, whenever a company wants to do a digital transformation, there will be a little bit of digital initiatives going all over the company, but without a particular having a real synergy, right? That will end up being conflicting initiatives, unaligned priorities, complex org team structures that will inhibit the growth, and eventually company will burn out all the budget that they had for the digital transformation because they're not having synergy, and then the transformation will fail. That's why you see such a high percentage of why digital transformation fails. And the third point I would say is the just trying to visualize it in front of you guys. I'm sure you guys would have seen tip of the iceberg picture, right? In some form of the context. There's a lack of understanding that it's really difficult to do it by connecting the dots between vision, strategy, and ultimately execution. How do you convert this? Just defining high level priority initiatives doesn't work. When you get into the details, a lot of things needs to be figured out. And last point in my mind is the cultural change management. If you don't do a proper cultural change management, you will end up failing. If you don't properly communicate to the teams about why, what, how you are doing it, you don't enable them to do it, give the right tool, process, clarity, it will end up getting failed.
Very well said, Sulabh. And definitely the focus on culture, change management, the importance in investing in employees. And so I have a specific query to Gautam. And in fact, and I know you mentioned about this a little while ago on the importance of leading with empathy. And I know you're being humble, but you're also an award-winning author where you wrote about leading with empathy and understanding the needs of today's workforce, right? And I mean, since a lot of these digital transformation initiatives are long, are arduous, how can leaders ensure that teams would work with them on the business outcomes without losing momentum or morale along the way? Your thoughts on this, Gautam?
Yeah, totally. That's the challenge, right? So I want to start off by saying great points by the entire panel on the challenges of a digital transformation. What I would add on to that, and probably start that as a launch board to talk about empathic leadership, is the fact that we are talking about a digital transformation, but more often than not, what a company tries to go through is digital change. There is a lot of difference between change and transformation. Change is like the changing colors of leaves on a tree in every season. It is a gradual process, but at the end of the day, the shape and form is pretty much similar. A transformation, on the other hand, is much more radical. We have the opportunity, and we're being given the power to take a step back and really rethink and reimagining things so that we can fundamentally change the way that we work. And when that transformation occurs, it can be extremely scary. There's a lot of stress and anxiety that will come with change. And so this is why I firmly believe that every transformation needs to start with empathy. So the first thing that leaders need to do is to be an empathic leader and create that psychologically safe environment for people to be more comfortable, to be themselves, to take risks, and also to understand that we have their backs. That is the most important thing that I feel we need to do. The next thing is to empower them. We've all talked about this. We need to enable the teams and provide them everything possible to be successful and empower them to make the decisions. We need to engage. We need to have open communication. And I like to call this the signal to noise ratio. So we need to improve the signal to noise ratio. The value that we are providing and the information that we're giving in each communication must be higher than the fluff we have around it. And so, pro tip, don't use Gen AI or ChatGPT to write your communication. I've already seen a lot of people use that. That is not you. If you are having a system write it, you're not being authentic, you're not being a leader. It's really that simple. The next thing is to entrust. And I think this is where leaders, especially, I mean, like I've done this when I was in one of my previous roles as well, where I've grown up through the ranks. So I'm extremely passionate about the things. I understand the systems. But if you have clearly articulated the why for your digital transformation, don't second guess the team's how. How they accomplish must be up to the team. And so as long as you give them the guardrails and say that this is what you're operating with, don't second guess their how. And so you need to entrust them. And then finally, I think all of us have pointed out is equipping them with the tools and technologies to be successful. The collaboration tools, the learning, the pairing, having the work-life balance. All this is really important. So you want to have, and I call these the 5 E's. Basically, you have to empathize with people, you have to empower people, you have to engage with them, and trust them, and then equip them to be successful. Because all these transformations are extremely long, and you need to make sure that people are happy when they're doing it. And if they are not happy, they are not going to support your cause. If they're not passionate about things, they will not support the cause. So I think that is the first step that we as leaders need to do, is focus on two things. The first thing is, and this is actually my primary belief, happy people are productive people. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is strategic disruption. I think Abhi talked about this a little bit. It's strategic disruption, not disruption for the sake of disruption, but strategic disruption is what leads to progress.
Great points, Gautam, and definitely focus on people and investing, the culture, empowering and trusting and equipping them to be successful, making sure all of that works together well in achieving business outcome as well. And which leads us to one of the next questions that I have for Sulabh. And in fact, as the vice president, the product and of product and IT at Lumen, and I know during our discussions you mentioned you work very closely with the C-level executives and in driving strategy, execution, all of that. And can you give us your views on the topic? Technology as an enabler, right? And the need to invest in people as well as culture to achieve the business outcomes, and making sure your team is with you in seeing the bigger picture of what needs to be achieved.
Yeah, I completely agree. With the statement, and also the inherent question is in that statement about the people and the cultural part, right? I think it's really important to first start with the company level priorities or the goals, keeping in mind what we want to achieve. And I think it was, I think, probably Gautam earlier who mentioned that it's not Gautam, and we also talked about it. It's not just about the financial goals, right? It's in general the goals at a larger level, and then you convert down into the metrics or the OKRs or the low level goals for each team, and then you start defining your product strategy, and then ultimately that will help team to really connect the why part, right? That will really help to drive the aspects of the what each team needs to do. And in terms of the culture and in terms of the providing the right skills and the support to the team, culture is such a big word in my opinion, right? It can mean, it can have like so many aspects, right? You talk about that there may be a very, in a big companies, there may be a very good cultures within the team, but as you go, beyond your team, the culture maybe not good, and that may be affecting, inherently affect the culture of that particular, of the other team. So I think the cultural change needs to happen at the company level, start at the overall company level, have an initiative which everyone can see at a common North Star. I will give example from Lumen, where our CEO, Kate Johnson, has initiated Dare to Lead culture. It's a very famous book by Brené Brown, and Brené Brown is actually coaching all of entire company and his team about the cultural change, how to incorporate a culture of courage and trust, team and transparency. So it has to be done at the entire company level, not just at the leadership level. You give some culture training and then let them, further propagate down. It's a big investment to do it at the company level, but I think it's required to be done, and every company should do it.
Thank you so much, Sulabh, and then great points on ensuring that companies have a North Star vision, strategy, which they're working towards in achieving their goals as well along the way. So, and while different companies, and especially with the rising demand from their competition, from their employees, their customers, there's also a need for providers across the spectrum that's evolving. And I mean, so this means digital transformation is beyond just system integration, beyond product engineering, and there's a lot of work, and the providers are also evolving to adjust to this go-to-market strategies and the needs of these clients. And how do companies really ensure that they're not over-invested when they work with these partners? And so with your experience, having worked as the head of alliances with your clients, I'd certainly love to hear from you, and then from Abby, from you as well, and ensuring how companies do not overinvest in digital transformation.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that we saw a lot of that kind of in the beginning days of the pandemic, right? There was a rush to get collaboration tools and a rush to kind of facilitate, this new world of everybody working remotely. And I think what you saw once the dust settled a bit, right? Companies realized that they had overlapping tools, right? They had native things that were probably already an investment that they weren't leveraging. And, they were likely paying for other technologies that they didn't necessarily need. So I think you want to avoid that. You want to make sure that you're taking a look at the different technologies that you're bringing in and making sure that they're super complementary to one another, first of all. And secondly, that there isn't overlap, because if you have overlap, then you've likely picked the wrong tools, right? You need very specific tools to solve very specific use cases, and making sure that, you're not bringing on one technology that's kind of also solving one other thing, but you're not leveraging that ability to solve that other thing. I think it's very complicated right now in today's world, because there's just so many tools that do so many things. And again, kind of going back to my original comments around picking a partner to help you, I think that's going to be the key there as well, and making sure that you get the complete understanding of what you are bringing into your organization, and not, bringing in things that aren't going to work well together, or over investing in things that you don't necessarily need, because that tool that you're already invested in has those capabilities.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sue. And then Abby, while you're on the topic, please tell us and the audience as well on where digital transformation stops, and what is beyond digital transformation, right? So while companies need to ensure they're not over-investing, they also need to ensure and understand what's beyond that, and how they are future ready in this whole journey.
No, absolutely. Thank you, John. This is one of the problems that we keep coming across, right? So digital transformation, again, all the problems that we talked about, all the misconceptions, it can truly branch out into so many different timelines that it becomes hard to again contain them and bring things back into solidarity. But where does digital transformation stop? See, unfortunately, I don't think transformation ever stops, right? If it stops, innovation stops, and you start dinosauring yourself if you stop transformation, right? However, transformation can be a very good enabler towards innovation. But for that, you need to have your baselines properly established. Your data, which is your cornerstone for how you're going to be, running your business. Streamline your data, streamline your cloud enablement in terms of being able to proliferate on top of, how do you run insights and things like those? How do you make a data-driven decision? You need scale, you need the ability to actually proliferate in terms of compute and everything, right? So establish your baselines from data and cloud enablement properly first. And then that will automatically help you propel your innovation. And innovation can take so many different forms, right? We cannot say that, when somebody is speaking of innovation, we cannot say that their definition of innovation is wrong, right? A process change could be an innovation, new thought process could be an innovation. But when we talk about digital transformation and innovation in that respect, then let's look at it as maybe emerging technologies that are driving enablement of these innovations, right? And for that, and when we talk emerging technologies, it could be machine learning, artificial intelligence. There's a very interesting question in the Q&A about AI, and we'll probably address that in a few minutes here. But when you look at ML, immersive technologies, digital twins, so many of these blockchain and so many of these different technologies, it's not about taking one technology and seeing what it is, right? When organizations, where they will probably start investing a lot more and losing that money is what I think Sulabh had mentioned. Siloed initiatives that are happening that are redundant to a large extent, right? So some of the best practices we've started looking at implementing is the North Star that we talked about. Have the North Star, absolutely have that North Star, and kind of organizationally, directionally determine what that North Star means for you. But then establish like an enterprise architecture group, an emerging tech group that is going to be driving these initiatives, right? Bring outside experts. Not every organization, if you're going to start taking to Sue's point, right? You're not enabled. Every organization is not necessarily enabled inherently to do all of these things. So that is where the partnerships, ecosystems, bringing in experts and vendors from outside who are doing these things, that will help a lot. But you also need to make sure that as these initiatives are taking on, you're setting up that education sessions and that education enablement for your own employees. So you're not totally dependent forever on these outside experts as well, right? So set up these processes in place and make your investments into emerging technologies a very practical investments. By that, I mean, for example, you take an AI ML model, for instance, right? Somebody is very excited about creating a new model or a generative AI model that we are trying to solve. Make it a very hypothesis-driven approach, right? So you know what you're going after and what are the problems you need to solve, but absolutely associate these initiatives with a business stakeholder. The problem that we've seen is if business stakeholders not associated with a particular initiative, there could be a lot of developer excitement, emerging technology excitement that comes in, and then it is never going to see the light of the day because business as usual takes over and people are not invested into this. It becomes a very costly science experiment like Sue was mentioning earlier, right? So business stakeholder association, involvement, and commitment is very, very important to make sure that your investments are not going astray, right? And then on the flip side of it, organizationally set up your industrialization processes. When you look at AI ML models, for instance, the developers may be so excited about 3 or 4 models that they've just started. They're excited about what those outcomes are. They will put their efforts, their excitement into all of that. They will track how the model is performing. They'll spend 3-4 months and everybody is happy about it. But ML model deployment is not only about these 3-4 models. When you look at organizations, it's going to go into hundreds, thousands of models that need to be deployed. Now, you cannot spend the same kind of energy on every model. So how do you set up those industrialization parameters and ecosystems where it is automated, right? So a lot of different things have to come together, but that is where, because business as usual takes a lot of, takes over, it's life, right? Everybody has their own targets to achieve. Set up that core enterprise architecture group that is going to be driving these initiatives in terms of how you see innovation and how you're bringing all of these technologies together, and tie them up with the appropriate initiatives like hypothesis driven development and business stakeholders and industrialization in the back end. That's me.
Okay, thank you so much, Abby. And let's shift gears a little bit. I was just going through some of the very interesting questions that the audience has sent, and before we get into that, just probably a couple of the points that we want to cover as well. And we did mention about the importance of measuring DT success, right? Especially when the failure rate is being so high. It's important to have checks and balances in place to measure effectiveness, the progress, while at the same time seeing those iterative progress or the milestones that we are achieving. So this question is for you, Calvin. So how do you measure what matters to ensure that you are achieving success in your business outcomes?
Yeah, and Abhi, thank you for bringing all that up, because that is a really good platform to start this conversation on measurement, because data is key. We need to make data-driven decision making and not emotional decision making, which more often than not happens in a digital transformation. Someone has a pet project or they're extremely squeaky, and that gets blessed and gets greenlit. So we talked about prioritizing the business outcomes and identifying which of them are going to drive success. But I think the next step, and this is where some organizations miss, especially because, and we talked about this, a digital transformation is a journey. It's never ending. It's a roadmap. It keeps going on. So what we want to do is not just identify the business outcome, but what is the definition of success for that business outcome? What do we mean? What is our aspirational state? And I think once we identify that for each business outcome, the definition of success, it becomes easy to understand the measures that are required, both the leading and the lagging indicators. Because in the industry, we tend to gravitate more towards technical metrics and operational metrics because that's easier to measure, like DORA, flow metrics, space metrics for dev productivity, your business KPIs, your financial indicators. Those are easy because they're deterministic and realistic. But when we are talking about business outcomes and the way things are happening, both the people and the processes that are using this technology are non-deterministic. And so we cannot use those things. We need to have that control loops or feedback loops. And Abhi, you talked about hypothesis-based measuring. The build, measure, learn loop is one of the most important ways to actually bring that in. But there are so many ways to do it. I would say that in this day and age, especially as we are going through a digital transformation, there are probably 5 areas we need to focus on measures. The first one is going to be security, right? Because everything is digital, you're exposing things. The way things are going, you want to make sure that you start off with having good security posture, governance, and compliance. So have measures around those. And when I say measures, I don't mean some of the vanity metrics. Like, for example, for maybe the number of clicks is not really a good measure. It is a vanity measure, but it's not a measure of success. So security is one area that we want to focus on. Productivity is another one, both from a processor, from a developer, and an operator perspective. Especially with transformations, we need to make sure that we're reducing the manual toil. And I think it was Sulabh who mentioned that iceberg model, which is you want to focus on the value line. So imagine the iceberg. Everything above the water is the high value activity that we need to have humans work on. And everything below that are low value activities that we need to have the processes and automation drive. So that's the way we would probably want to measure, reduce that manual toil. The third one is impact, which is your return on investment. That is always important. If you are not just, you have taken money from the board of directors. If you do not show your return on investment, you probably will not be working there for a long time. So that is really important. Measure the innovation that is coming out of this digital transformation, the profitability, of course. Resiliency is another thing. Your stability, your availability, your resiliency, all your ITs that you have. You want to do that. And finally, efficiencies, like your technology efficiencies. Sue mentioned we started realizing we had multiple tools doing the same thing. We probably can rationalize those and reduce it. So that's something that we want to focus on. And then afterwards, your process efficiencies and your people efficiencies. So I think once you understand those things, you can truly get to the measures that really matter for your digital transformation.
Well, thank you so much, Gautam, for summarizing that into the 5 key areas from security to productivity, impact, having the right profitability, resiliency, and then lastly, the efficiencies as well, while measuring the outcome. And I'm sure this next question is something the audience would like to hear about. And I mean, we're all speaking about generative AI today, and it's become more than just another buzzword. And every conference you're at, some of the C-level executives are speaking about it, and it's impacting various parts of the service provider value chain today, and it threatens to disrupt client business models as well today. And it's also driving major investments from VCs, from PE firms, and ethical AI tends to be one of the dominant subjects at any debate today, and then sometimes even crowding out some of the other relevant trends from just a few months ago. And this question, and it would definitely answer some of the questions from the audience as well, right? So how has the recent surge in AI affected the roadmap for organizations? And also the second part to it is some of the interesting use cases that you see today from areas such as deep learning or generative AI, or how AR, VR is combined with artificial intelligence or edge IoT, blockchain, and advanced analytics, especially as it pertains to the fourth industrial revolution in your specific organizations and your client organizations as well. And certainly we'd love to hear from all the panelists on this. And so if you'd be kind enough to get started off on this.
Yeah. So I would say the how it has changed the roadmap. So I will try to summarize it to two areas. First is the internal employee productivity related aspect, or not just employee productivity, internal productivity within the company, right? So for example, let us bring the co-pilots, right? That you will hear a lot of companies have started to adopt co-pilots, whether it is in Microsoft 365 or it is GitHub or it is something else, ChatGPT, right? That will help to increase the productivity. Second part I see is it is affecting the roadmap is through the customized use cases that you can build to serve your customers, and that would be specific to what specific use cases on what that company is working on, what their business model is, so on and so forth, right? So that's how I segregate at a high level, right? And I'm sure there can be third or fourth area as well. But internal productivity related, and second maybe that you can offer as part of your product or solution and sell it externally, right? So again, going back to external custom use cases, how it will hit the top line, productivity, how it hit your bottom line, right? That's how they are changing the roadmap in the organization.
Thank you, Sulabh. Abby, your thoughts on this?
No, absolutely. I think there was one question in the Q&A as well. Why should we single out AI as probably one of the most impactful technology areas, right? So, we automatically gravitate towards AI. Has it really taken off into true industrialization? There is still a long roadmap before we get there in terms of industrialization of AI. But having said that, the concept itself has so much gravity. For me personally, leading a lot of R&D initiatives and innovation initiatives, I work with blockchain. I work with drones. I work with robotics, right, IoT devices or whatnot. So there are so many different areas that we work with. I've even worked with some very interesting technologies in terms of data security, like fully homomorphic encryption, right? So that enables you not only to, your data is completely at rest all the time. So where people are worried about biometrics and my face recognition data, if it's going to be there, my biometrics data is there out on the cloud, it's only a matter of time before I get compromised. But FHE as a technology can truly revolutionize things like those, right? So there's so many different spectrum of technologies that we work with. But AI, we still consider very emerging. The reason it's not just traditional machine learning that you're doing based on data, but it is concepts like deep learning, for instance, right? So deep learning from a computer vision perspective solves so many things, not just with, for example, Amazon started with the store of the future, right? Walk-in technology. Now, just because they have been a pioneer, that does not necessarily mean that they have the first mover advantage, right? We work with one of our clients where we've developed that entire technology from an automated store perspective, but we're able to bring that to the market at $50,000-$60,000 per installation, right? Not a $500,000 per installation. So there is so much advancements that is happening, even in terms of processing all of this AI, right? So, but from an AI perspective itself, whether you're looking at deep learning technologies, computer vision, or even advanced technologies like generative adversarial networks, where we've done digital avatars, for instance, very, very interesting use cases around those. Gen AI has truly revolutionized. So there is more and more things coming up. And why is this happening? Human mind, our brains are the most difficult things to simulate or emulate. And this is the technology that is eventually trying to work towards that emulation, which is very, very difficult to achieve. And automatically we gravitate towards that. I don't think there is going to be an end towards where AI is going and what new evolutions are going to come within AI. It is going to be a very, very progressive, experience there. And the applications of these, whether you talked about 4IR, right? So 4IR. From an industry 4.0 perspective, whether you're looking at factories of future, it is going to be applicable everywhere in terms of operational efficiencies or the different measures that we're talking about. A lot of those things, security measures Gautam was talking about. Now AI can be enabled in terms of zero trust security as well, right? So instead of worrying about, hey, my network is already compromised, how do I hide my assets? How do we take it one step above in the whole value chain and say, your assets are not even going to be found if you are not authenticated, right? So we do not have to look at the lower levels, right? So AI for me is one of those technologies which is going to revolutionize the way all use cases in the world are going to be. However, like you mentioned, ethical AI. For every good actor, there are 3 bad actors that are going to be doing it, right? So how do organizations push, not only organizations pushing responsible AI processes and ethical AI processes, but how do governance across the global governance, how does it come in terms of, cross-border organizations to build an ethical AI enablement and enforcement that is truly going to define how AI will impact our lives positively or negatively in the value scale.
Thank you, Abhi. And but I know we're probably we just have another 5 minutes to wrap up, but certainly want to take up a few questions from the audience as well. And I know, Abhi, you spoke about how AI is different from blockchain and so many other next big innovations, right? So, and one of the questions from the audience today is also, when we talk about it specifically for high-tech companies and how they are changing with technology, can you tell us about some of the common problems that they might face, and what are the mistakes they should be careful not to make?
Anyone specific, John, you're looking at?
Abby, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. See, I feel high-tech could be a little bit of a misleading term, whether we're talking with pharma organizations, whether we're talking with telco organizations, right? So every organization that we're looking at are trying to enable technologies so much that slowly they're also changing their core nature of, for example, T-Mobile is a lot more technology-driven organization than a bandwidth-driven organization, or equally now. That's the direction that they're going towards, right? So every organization is looking at bringing in a high-tech element into their operations, right? So ultimately, purely looking at high-tech organizations, the entire risk of cost-benefit analysis in terms of how you're deploying your digital strategies and whether the market is still ready for it. For example, when you look at digital avatars, for instance, the technology is ready for digital avatars, but is the population ready for digital avatars? There is always going to be a trust factor that you have to overcome before digital avatars become truly operational, right, and automated in that sense. So that is the catch-20 that definitely organizations have to see, is not get too excited about the technology itself. Their fully homomorphic encryption took 35 years before it saw the light of the day, right? So things will take some time. So you need to hedge your bets into the right places. Go after the whys, why you're doing this, where the costs are and what the benefits are. Evaluate those and then go through that right, not only exploration but also execution methodologies, I feel.
If I can add to what Abhi is saying, I think one anti-pattern that might emerge, and we might see it a lot until it normalizes, is that we as leaders or we as technologists should not look at generative AI as a substitute. Rather, it should be a supplement. And the reason why I say that is, if your why of using generative AI is so that you can reduce costs and make sure that you remove humans because it's cheaper, then that's not your right why. You are probably trying to do it in a really bad way, and it is not going to end well, because at the end of the day, even if you are trying to use generative AI, these large language models need to be continuously monitored, tweaked, learned. There's a lot that goes into this. These are not really simple, like how we used to have neural networks or Bayesian filters, right? These are more complex mechanisms. So look at it as a supplementing of the value that you are currently delivering and how you can enhance it rather than a substitute, is what I would say.
Absolutely. And that's the education is very important there as well, Gautam. I feel more and more conversations we're having, one common theme that I'm realizing is that people think that generative AI and large learning models are, they can do everything. It's a silver bullet, right? It is not. You cannot throw data at it and ask it to, interpret that for you. There is a lot of engineering that needs to happen behind it for generative AI to actually produce what it is supposed to be producing. So yeah, education is extremely important.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I know we're almost at the end of scheduled time. And before we wrap things up, any parting advice for the audience? And I'll let the panelists go as you see fit before we hand it off to Nitin from the course party.
Yeah, I can start, John, and then I have to drop because of a hard conflict. The last point I would say from my side is, before we talk about digital transformation, probably each one of us have to do also our professional and personal transformation. And in order to do that, you need to become, I believe, is adventurer, so that you can have a courage to explore digital in the face of uncertainty. That will, if you have an adventurer capability, you can become a clarifier and educator, so that you can talk to your stakeholders, clarify what really it means. That will also help you to become a attractor of talent and